Hello everyone. I hope you all doing good, and welcome on this video. Today we gonna talk about the GOAT, Sevagoth. Oh boy, this is gonna be a long one. So, make yourself comfortable, and enjoy. Let's start with the way to get Sevagoth. This Warframe is hard to get. Sevagoth's main blueprint is acquired after completing the Call of the Tempestuary quest. His components can be acquired from Void Storm missions in Pluto Proxima, Neptune Proxima, or Vale Proxima. If you have bad railjack, don't get into Sevagoth farming right away, but increase your railjack instead. The drop rates are very low, 10%, so be prepared to sleep about railjack missions. Also, I show you what materials you need for crafting it. Let's talk about his passive now. Intertwined forever in life and death, Sevagoth and his shadow exhibit numerous unique properties and interactions. Death and rebirth unending. On fatal injury, and entering bleed out, Sevagoth's body petrifies into a broken tombstone, as his shadow manifests itself. Control the shadow to collect the souls of 5 enemies, by casting Consume via the ability, quick melee, or fire weapon buttons, with a targeted enemy, reviving Sevagoth upon a full harvest. Alternatively, allies may manually revive Sevagoth, by interacting with his tombstone. While the passive is activated, a soul counter appears above Sevagoth's ability icons, indicating the number of remaining enemies required to revive Sevagoth, as well as a bleed-out gauge that counts down toward his death. Sevagoth's shadow summoned by the passive is still vulnerable to damage and status effects. It utilizes its equipped mods and arcanes, but cannot cast its other abilities. Beware, should the shadow die, Sevagoth will also truly die, but only in solo mode. In co-op, his shadow simply vanishes, and his tombstone will remain for the rest of his bleed-out timer, still available to be revived by his allies. Consume is altered to cost no energy to cast, and inflicts armor and shield bypassing damage, equal to the target's total hit points, instantly killing non-boss enemies. By the way, Undying Will, and Phoenix Renewal, will still function normally on Sevagoth's tombstone. Sevagoth's shadow flies outward, ravaging enemies in his path. Survivors are damaged by death's harvest over time. The souls of the dead fill the death well. Sevagoth severs apart from his shadow by expending 25 energy to expel it toward the direction of his aiming reticle. Reap's shadow is an unidentified flying object, an invulnerable flying object that lasts for 6 seconds, with a variable flight speed of 10 meters per second, if cast by tapping the ability key, or 20 meters per second if held down. The shadow's harrowing wail weakens all enemies within 8 meters, inflicting 250 radiation damage and marking them with Death's Harvest. Marked enemies receive 50% increased damage from all subsequent sources for 10 seconds. Energy cost is affected by ability efficiency. Damage and debuff damage vulnerability are affected by ability strength. Flight and debuff durations are affected by ability duration. Radius is affected by ability range. Casting speed is affected by natural talent and speed drift. Flight speeds, active shadow limit, as well as damage and mark instance per enemy are not affected by mods. Plant a death seed in nearby targets to drain their life force. Reap what has been sown to detonate afflicted enemies, dealing a percentage of their health as radial damage. The souls of the dead fill the death well. Sevagoth damns the souls of the wicked by expending 50 energy to implant death seeds into all enemies within a radius of 6 meters. Seeded enemies decay toward death, taking 250 true damage per second over 10 seconds. Total damage per second for each enemy decreases with distance from Sevagoth upon cast. Damage fall off begins from 100% damage at half range, scaling to maximum falloff at 25% damage at maximum range. Sown enemies hit by Reap receive a second radiation damage instance and detonate, dealing 25% of their current health as blast damage to other enemies in a 4-meter radius. While Gloom is active, sown enemies heal Sevagoth's health as they take damage per second. Each enemy seeded, then killed by any source, or directly killed by fills 5% of the death well for Exalted Shadow. Exalted Shadow is Sevagoth's 4th ability. Energy cost is affected by ability efficiency. Damage per second is affected by ability strength. Duration is affected by ability duration. Range is affected by ability range. Casting speed is affected by natural talent and speed drift. summon a radial pulse wave that ensnares and slows enemies, siphoning their life force for the death well. Allies within the wave steal health with each attack. Sevagoth unleashes flowing darkness around him, as a radial wave pulses out at a speed of 2 meters per second, beginning from 4 meters, then expands up to 16 meters. Enemies within his aura suffer from 35% reduced action speed.
Hey, what happened?
Whilst Sevagoth and allies standing within gain 5% lifesteal for damage dealt, with weapons and abilities, against any enemies. Gloom costs 50 energy to deploy, remaining active as an aura around Sevagoth, until deactivated manually by pressing the ability key again, or automatically when Sevagoth runs out of energy. Once active, Gloom reacts to enemy presence in its radius, slowing all enemies within. Each enemy slowed by Gloom drains a base amount of 0.75 energy per second, stacking up to a cap of 10 enemies, for a maximum drain amount of 7.5 energy per second. Another important thing, Gloom remains activated and centered on Sevagoth's body during Exalted Shadow. Slow and lifesteal are affected by ability strength. Slow cannot exceed 95% under any circumstances, achievable with 272% ability strength. Range increase is affected by ability duration. Minimum and maximum range are affected by ability range. Activation cast speed is affected by natural talent and speed drift. When the death well fills to above 75%, Sevagoth's shadow form is ready to be released. Tear the enemy asunder with a collection of melee-focused abilities. Immortalized by his Reaping of Souls, Sevagoth passively collects the life essences of enemies affected by, or slain by Reap, Sow, Gloom, or Death's Harvest, gradually filling the death well gauge, displayed above his ability icons. Once 75% of the gauge is filled, Sevagoth may leave his mortal body behind, to transfer control into his shadow manifestation, which is propelled forward for 5 meters, then drains 1% of the death well per second, to remain summoned. Sevagoth's shadow possesses 4 new abilities. First one is Embrace. Sevagoth's shadow expands the reach of its grasp by expending 25 energy to tether, then reel in all enemies standing within a conical area spanning 20 meters, and at 80 degrees angle centered on the aiming reticle. In other words, it's a hook. Very useful when you need to pack enemies. Energy cost is affected by ability efficiency. Lifted duration is affected by ability duration. Range is affected by ability range. Casting speed is affected by natural talent and speed drift. Pull angle is not affected by mods. Sevagoth's shadow does not require direct line of sight to affect enemies within the conical area. Next ability is Consume. Sevagoth's shadow lunges forward horizontally across 14 meters, toward the aiming reticle, if cast without a target, or dashes through a targeted enemy within range, by expending 25 energy. On contact with the targeted enemy, Consume inflicts 2,500 radiation damage, and knockdown, while healing the shadow's health pool by 25% of the damage dealt. The target's soul is also ejected skyward, and its body suffers from confusion for few seconds. Energy cost is affected by ability efficiency. Damage and lifesteal are affected by ability strength. Range is affected by ability range. Dash speed is affected by casting speed like natural talent and speed drift. Its 3 is Death's Harvest. Sevagoth's shadow lets loose a harrowing wail to leave a death mark on all enemies within a radius of 12 meters. Marked enemies take 50% increased damage from all subsequent sources for 10 seconds. Energy cost is affected by ability efficiency. Debuff damage vulnerability is affected by ability strength. Duration is affected by ability duration. Range is affected by ability range. Casting speed is affected by natural talent and speed drift. Now, the last ability of the Sevagoth's shadow, Reunite. Sevagoth's shadow transfers its master's consciousness back into his physical body by teleporting Sevagoth over unrestricted range to the shadow's location and merge together at no cost.
Stop! No! Just stop it!
Reunite is automatically cast if the death well is empty, if shadow receives fatal damage, or if Sevagoth's body enters an ability nullification sphere. For the build now, we will see 3 together. Warframe Sevagoth build, Sevagoth Shadow build, and Sevagoth Claw build. In total, you will need 15 formas, but I tell you that it is 100% worth it. Let's start with the Sevagoth build. This build is 6 forma. First we have Adaptation, It's a mod that I no longer have to present, it gives us a lot of survivability, and Sevagoth takes advantage of that. Duration isn't the most important stat on Sevagoth, but we need it anyway. For the duration of the two, which will allow us to fill the gauge faster, to use the shadow of Sevagoth. In addition, since we are playing with corrupted mods, that take away a lot of our duration, we have to balance all that. Then we have stretch, the range is rather interesting. Sevagoth's 3 Gloom benefits greatly from the range. There is also the first power of the Sevagoth's shadow, the hook, which with range, will allow you to hook enemies further. Umbra Intensity, ability strength is important. It increases the duration of the slow of the 3 Gloom, it increases the damage per second on your 2 so, but the most important is that Shadow Claw's damage is affected by the ability strength stat of Sevagoth, but not on Shadow. This is why you need good power strength. Fleeting expertise, efficiency is as important as ability strength. It allows your 3 Gloom to last longer, and reduces the drain per enemy the ability uses. That's why I'm going for 175% efficiency, to have a drain per 10 enemies set at 1.88 energy, instead of 7.5 per 10 enemies, with no efficiency. Transient Fortitude, we want to achieve good power, and this mod helps us a lot. Streamline, just to achieve that 175% efficiency that we need. For the Exilus, I chose Power Drift to have a little more power. And finally, for the Aura mode, the best choice is increasing power, which will give you power, that will always serve you. For the Arcane now, the Arcane Guardian will give you more armor, it is a good choice for more survivability, and second we have the Arcane Grace, which gives you health regeneration, when you are attacked. Now we can see Sevagoth's Shadow build, this build is pretty tanky, and what is interesting is that, there are 3 Umbra mods equipped, but no Umbra Forma. First, we have Blind Rage, ability strength on Sevagoth's Shadow is useful for his 3, it increases the vulnerability of enemies. With 272% ability strength, we go up to 138%, which is huge vulnerability. It is also used to increase the damage of its 2, consumed. Duration is not that important, but it's still worth for its 3, Death's Harvest. It increases the duration of the vulnerability. Streamline, just because we need a little efficiency, to reduce the energy used on cast. The 3 Umbra mods, which together give us good stats in power, vitality and armor. Augur Reach, it directly increases the range of your 3 Death Harvest. Fleeting Expertise, because we are using Blind Rage. So we need to put something to balance that negative efficiency. For the Aura, I use Steel Charge, obvious choice here. Also, it gives us a good capacity to be able to equip the 3 Umbra mods without Umbra Forma. For the Arcanes now, I use Arcane Strike, which give you 15% chance for 60% attack speed for 18 seconds. And Arcane Guardian, for more survivability. We finally come to the last part, the claws of the Sevagoth's Shadow. Here too, you are going to need some Forma, to maximize the damage, to its maximum. No concession here, we want the max. For this build, I'm not going to detail all the mods, because it's a classic melee build, that everyone is familiar with. There are 6 Forma, because I use the Umbra Sacrificial Steel mod, which gives 220% critical chance, compared to the normal mod, which gives much less. Then it's a Corrosive Classic build, with Heat for Strip Armor, Organ Shatter, and Gladiator Might, which gives us 6.5x critical multiplier. We also have 121.6% critical chance, which is very huge. This poor acolyte didn't know.
Hello there.
For the gameplay, it's pretty simple, let your 3 activated. Activate your 2, and kill as many enemies as possible, during this time. Then once your gauge is at 75%, transform yourself into Sevagoth's Shadow. Once you are in Shadow, use your hook to pack as many enemies as possible, then simply melee attacks. Don't hesitate to use your 2 to completely regenerate your life in a single dash. Use your 3 if you run out of damage against certain enemies. By the way, for the Operator School, I suggest you go Zenuric, for the Energizing Dash, which give you a lot of energy in small time. To conclude this video, I would just say that Sevagoth offers unique gameplay. And it's good for a lot of content, it has good cross control with its 3, it has huge damage with its 4, and it's really fun to play. I think that's it for this video. I really hope you enjoy it. If so, feel free to smash the like button. Stay tuned guys, next video very soon.